Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
And, excuse me, and we are, of course, doing that famous passage about Jacob wrestling with the angel, and we already started that. So he has now encountered the angel, and they're in the process of wrestling up until daybreak. So here we are. Vayar, he saw, ki lo yachol lo. That is to say, the angel or the man saw that he was not able to overcome him. Vayika bechaf yerecho, and he touched the hollow of his thigh. Vateka kaf yerech Yaakov, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh. Rashi's going to explain this word, was dislodged. Behe avako imo, when he wrestled with him. So, Vayiga bechaf yerecho, here's the Rashi. Right, so he explains the chaf yerecho, which isn't so clear. What is the hollow of the thigh? What does that really mean? So he says, kolit hayerech, the upper thigh, the upper section of the thigh, hatakua bekilboset, which is attached to the hip bone. Right, so it's that
Socket.
Yeah, well, the hip bone would have a socket, and I imagine that we're talking about that round part of the bone at the
Well,
top.
that's the ball. And I think he's
Right.
talking about the socket because he describes it as cough.
Yes, right. But somehow it's this. Yeah, you're right. You're right. That would have to be the thing. But he says it's attached to the hip bone, so that's why. And I believe I looked up the word kulit, and yerech is the thigh itself, which would be the thigh bone. So karui kaf, it's called a kaf, a spoon, al shem shehabasar she'aleh kamin kaf, because the flesh that is on it is like a type of a spoon, shel kedera, of a pot, or a bowl. Vateka, and he explains, nit kaka, it was dislodged, mimakom chaverta, from its, literally from the place of its neighbor. In other words, obviously these two bones are close to each other, they're joined, and it was dislodged. Vedomelo, he says this is similar to an expression in Jeremiah chapter 6, pen teka nafshe mimcha, lest my soul be dislodged from you. Lashon hasara, it has the meaning of removal. Uva Mishnah lekaka bitzatan. So there is this expression in the Mishnah which means to exterminate. This little reference, in case you're wondering what this is the J stands for the Jastrow Dictionary, and 164 is the page, and the B is because there's a line that goes down the middle of the page, and it's on the right side of that line, and it's his third explanation of lekaka bitzatan. The sharesh, 164b would be on Beitzah, the sun. The sharesh shor shehen, which would mean to uproot it, right? To uproot its roots, literally. Vayomer, and he said to him, this again is the one who's wrestling with Jacob, shalcheni, let me go, let me leave. Ki Allah hashachar, for the dawn has broken. So this is the reason he's asking to be allowed to leave. And this is what suggests especially that this is an angel. Ki Allah shachar, Rashi explains, V'tzarich ani lomar shira bayom. And it's my responsibility, I have to say song in the day. Meaning that the angels also, that we have this vision of the angels. Remember, Kara Ze'el Zevamar, it's from Isaiah, and this idea of the angels actually calling out and singing song to God in praise of God every day. And I think that's also a reflection of the fact that we ourselves, as Jews, are supposed to do this. And so it's to reflect what the angels are doing here in the world. And just the reference, the two references, Bereshit Rabbah and Chulin, as a tractate in the Talmud. See if there's any more Rashi on this. Yes. Oh, no, that's not it. All right, so we will go on. Yeah?
You haven't finished the verse yet, and then there's more
That's
Rashi
good.
on the
There
rest
we
of the
go.
verse.
Great. On this, thank you. Yes. Vayomer, so Jacob responds to him and says, Lo ashalechacha, I will not let you leave. Ki im berachtani, unless you bless me. Which I thought was quite sort of poignant in a way, because Jacob's desire to be blessed, that it was something that meant a lot to him. And Rashi explains why. So Beirachtani. And the Beirachtani is to mean Hodeh li, acknowledge for me, al habrachot sheberchani aviv, regarding the blessings with which my father blessed me. She'esav ma'arer alehem, because Esau is questioning their legitimacy. And there's this note here, an editorial note. This is not Rashi itself. This is the editor of Rashi who's putting on this explanation as to why Rashi doesn't say bless me, meaning bless me, but rather acknowledge those previous blessings. Why does he say that? And he says, V'kan kasher le Rashi. And he says, what the question that Rashi is asking, the reason why he's going that direction, is because if it just meant to bless him, right, that he wanted the angel to bless him, he should have said, Tevarcheni, Hava le lomar. That's what this means. In other words, it should have said, Tevarcheni, and that would have clarified and meant that he wanted the angel to bless him. But in this particular case, Beirachtani has to do with the blessings that I had, acknowledge them. Ela hodeh, so rather it means to acknowledge, v'chule, etc. V'chein ita behedya, and he goes on to say that this is stated explicitly bezohar, in the Zohar, Parshat Hazriah, and apparently there's a chapter called Tazria in Leviticus Parsha, because the Zohar is also organized by the Parshiot of the Torah. And he gives you the page number, 45. V'dok, he says, it's clear there. So that's something, of course, to consider, right? That it's one thing to be blessed, it's another thing to have those blessings vetted, so to speak. And that if Jacob was concerned about Esau questioning the legitimacy of those blessings, this gets into some topics that we've talked about already, right? I mean, first of all, the whole way in which it was achieved is questionable from a legal standpoint. So I guess one could pull this out and say, maybe when you get the blessings initially in terms of verbiage, you may not deserve them, but possibly as you live out your life, you can learn how to actually deserve those blessings. And that potential is always there. I think that's actually probably a very good issue to consider. Vayomer elav, so the angel says to him, Ma shmecha, what is your name? And I want to point out that as in English, when you talk about someone's name, you can talk about literally about what they're called, but it also has in Hebrew, as it does in English, and what I suspect is that this may be true for many languages, it also means reputation. What do they associate with you? So at any rate, I think that is also intended here. So the angel says to him, what is your name? Vayomer Yaakov, and he said to him, Yaakov, which we know essentially means supplanter, right? Which is exactly what he did regarding the blessings, right?
No Rashi for that.
Right, okay. So he goes on, the angel says to him, Vayomer, he said to him, Lo Yaakov Ye'amer od Shimcha. Your name no longer will be referred to as Yaakov, Ki im Yisrael, but rather Yisrael. Why Yisrael? Ki sarita im Elohim ve'im anashim vatochal. For you have wrestled with, and here Elohim, at least the way the tradition understands it, it doesn't refer to God. It refers to powerful beings, right? So we know that Elohim basically means judges. And when we say, God, when we refer to Eloheinu, and we are referring to Hashem, it's talking, as I think I've mentioned before, about our willingness to accept God subjectively now as our Elohim. In other words, Hashem exists regardless of whether or not we acknowledge God's existence. But to call God Elohim is to acknowledge God's existence. And that's why we say Eloheinu, our Elohim. So in other words,
Why does the the Targum just says Kadam Hashem?
it does. I know, it does translate it that way. It's interesting, isn't it? So good point. Thank you for pointing that out. It's right over here. Kodam, Are Rav Revat Kodam Hashem ve'im Guvrayu. So it's possible that you'll see how Rashi interprets it. And it's possible that the Targum gives the alternative explanation. But I'm just saying traditionally this is not understood as, even though the Targum appears to be saying that here. And of course the Yud, which is an abbreviation incidentally, right? So I would have to see, why the Targum goes that way. It's a good point. Thank you, Shirabeth. Let's see what Rashi has to say about it. And I also can, if I have a chance to, I can also take a look at the Siftei Chachamim and see if he comments on that too.
Well, also because it says Im Elohim ve'im Anashim.
Yeah.
So Anashim is people,
right?
In general.
True, but Elohim can also refer, by the way, sometimes Elohim can refer to people as well. Although here, as I said, the understanding, remember we said that that one interpretation was that this person represented Esau's guardian angel. And that would be referred to as, in other words, the idea of when we call God our Elohim, we are attesting God's power. And we are accepting the idea that God has this power over us and over the world.
In the Chabad, it's translation, it says because you have commanding power with, and then in parentheses it says an angel of, close parentheses, God, and with men, and you have prevailed.
And that could well be because he's taking into account the Targum there. Okay. So, it's interesting that the preposition is Kodam Hashem, but the preposition with people is Im. Notice there's a difference. It doesn't say Rav Ravat Im Hashem, the Im Guvraya. It just says Kodam. And Kodam would mean before, right? In the presence of.
But in the text, I don't see anything about Hashem or Kodam.
No. Well, right. And then in the Hebrew, notice, by the way, the Hebrew is Im and Im, right? And the Targum is Ve'im Anashim, right? That's because Elohim in Hebrew doesn't necessarily refer to God.
How would you translate it in that pasuk if you were going to translate it?
Well, I know what the tradition, I've seen the translation, and the translation that I've seen says powerful beings.
Powerful beings.
Yeah, as regard to Elohim, which certainly takes into account the fact that, when you talk about a being, you may not be talking about a human being.
And Chabad, as I mentioned before, says an angel of God, with an angel of being parenthetical.
Right. I mean, I think the thing that we need to acknowledge is that it's not an easy thing to translate, that there's some, ambiguity regarding this. At any rate, let's.
JPS says beings divine and human.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Thank you for it. That's good. Let's take a look here. Lo Yaakov, lo ye'amer od shehabracha ba'u lecha be'akeva v'remiyah. No longer. So here's how he is. This in Rashi is going ahead with his initial understanding of Berachtani, right? In the angel's words it is, no longer will be said that the blessings came to you, ba'akeva, right? In a supplanting or cheating. Ramai is a cheat, right? Through supplanting or through cheating. Ki im bishrara v'galui panim. He says, so shrara generally means authority, right? In other words, they're given authoritatively. V'galui panim, I would say transparently, right? Literally, it means revealed face. V'sofcha, and in the end, for you, shehakadosh baruch hu nigla alecha, that the Holy One, blessed be He, will be revealed to you, beveit el, in Beit El, umachalif shimcha, and God will in fact then change your name, because as you'll see later on, we actually have God telling him the same thing. V'sham hu mevarechacha, he says, and there God who mevarechacha, he will bless you. V'ani sham eheyeh, and I will be there. Ve'odeh lacha alehem, and I will acknowledge to you regarding them. Ve'zehu shekatuf, and he says this is referred to in Hosea, the prophet Hosea, chapter 12. Ve'yashar el malach vayuchal. Wow. Okay. I'd have to, Lauren, I probably could use some help here, but it's something, Yashar, I'm not sure how he's using this as a verb here. Yashar has to do with to be straight to the angel, and he again, yuchal, right, is to acknowledge or to overcome or something like that. Bacha. Vayitchanen lo. So, and bacha can also mean to, livkot is to cry. So I'll refer to you, I'll seek your assistance there. Let me just keep going. Let me continue.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you are.
This is towards the end of verse 20, Rashi on 29, and it's the quote from Hosea.
Towards the end of Rashi?
Well, we're in 29. It's
Okay,
in the middle of it, in the middle of the
Rashi,
Rashi.
so.
Do you see?
Okay.
Do you have the Rashi there?
Yeah, lots and lots of Rashi. Yeah.
Okay, so it should follow the Hosea quote. Vayitchanen lo, he supplicated with him. Bacha hamalach. So this could be Rashi's interpretation of this verse here. Bacha hamalach, the angel cried. Vayitchanen lo, and pleaded with him. Uma nitchanen lo, and in what sense did he supplicate with him? Beit El Yimtzaenu, okay, we will be found at Beit El, Vesham Yidaber Imanu, and there he will speak with us. Hamtainli, wait for me, Ad Sheyidaber Imanu. This is all Rashi interpreting that verse. Until he speaks with us, that is, God speaks with us. Sham, there. Velor Ratza Yaakov. But Yaakov did not want to accede to this. Ve'al korchel hodeh lo alehem. So it's what he's saying is that the angel had to acknowledge those blessings under protest. Vezehu vayavarech oto sham. So I think Rashi is pointing out that this word sham there, right? It's not a necessary word. It could have just said, if it meant that the angel, without any question, blessed him, it could have just simply said, and he blessed him. But the fact that it says vayavarech oto sham, that he blessed him there, shaya mitchanen lahamtin lo v'lo that the angel was supplicating with Jacob, begging Jacob to wait until Bethel, v'lo and Jacob did not want to do that. So, all right, let's. Lauren, do you want to read what Chabad has there on your Rashi?
Yeah, so there are three Rashis, but the first one is the long one. It says, "It shall no longer be said that the blessings came to you through trickery and deceit, but with nobility and openness, and ultimately the Holy One, blessed be he, will reveal himself to you in Bethel and change your name, and there he will bless you, and I will be there." And that's quotation. I don't see where the beginning of that quotation is.
Keep going. Just keep going.
He then acknowledged them, the blessings, as being his, Jacob's. This is the meaning of what is written, Hosea
Hosea, this is the quote. Go ahead.
12:5. He strove with an angel and prevailed over him. He wept and supplicated him, meaning that the angel wept and supplicated him. With what did he supplicate him? In Bethel he will find him, and there he will speak with us, Ibid. Wait for me until he speaks with us there. Jacob, however, did not consent to release the angel, and against the angel's will, the angel acknowledged them, the blessings, as being his, Jacob's. There is the meaning of, and he blessed them there, that he entreated him to wait, but he did not wish to do so. From
Right.
Zohar.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you. So I hope that clarifies it as I try to translate it. I'm not too unhappy with what I wound up with anyway.
So many hises, and you just have to,
Yes, I know, sort it out.
Its and that's and whatever.
Okay, so I can summarize it this way, right? So the fact that it says he blessed him there implies that he was forced to bless him there. That's how Rashi's understanding it. And then he finds support in this verse in Hosea, in the words of that verse, to suggest that the angel was pleading with Jacob to wait until Bethel for him to be blessed, okay, and for this to be acknowledged. And Jacob refused, which of course raises a lot of interesting issues, because in a way, of course, it's also, maybe this is the wrestling. Right? It's a different kind of wrestling. And it says that Jacob was successful. So here he was wrestling him in terms of what the angel wanted to do and what Jacob wanted the angel to do. And Jacob prevailed. Interesting. That leaves for a lot to be thought about as to what the implications are. So here we go. Ve'im anashim, and with people, Esav v'Lavan. In other words, right, he is entangled with Esau and Laban. Both of them tried to destroy him, and he was successful. He survived. Vatuchal lahem, and you overcame them. You were able to overcome them. Understand, of course, this is all foreshadowing. It's all foreshadowing, and it could well be sort of the foreshadow of what subsequently happens to the Jewish people, that the anti-Semitism and the attempts to destroy the Jewish people, and that somehow here we are, that we have been able to survive, and it's certainly saying there are going to be attempts to destroy us. It's not interpreting why that might be happening, whether or not we brought it on ourselves. And I think in many cases, the Torah and the subsequent literature in the Bible certainly takes that approach, that in so many ways we bring it on ourselves. Isaiah takes a different approach. Later, Isaiah suggests that it's because it's an attempt on human beings to attack God, and that as, in a sense, representatives of God's presence in this world, or the making aware of people God's presence, and the notion that as a result people need to acknowledge and accept God as the authority, and people don't want to accept divine authority, so they pick on the representatives. So that's Isaiah's point of view, whereas the original and the one that's the prevailing position is, Jews abandon God, Israelites, the people of Israel, abandoned God, and this is the consequence. So, let's see. I think this is probably a good point at which to stop. It may not be emotionally the best place to stop, but I think this is where we do need to do it because of time. So we have another interesting passage here. I will just leave it without telling you what it says. It is an interesting statement. Jacob's response to all of this. Right? The angel asked Jacob his name. So there we are. We'll start. With God's help, this is where we'll start tomorrow. And hopefully we'll get at least to finish the first two aliyot of this particular parsha. So thank you. Jocelyn, do you want me to try and answer your question about why? I think that Jocelyn, I don't know if you saw the chat, Jocelyn was asking why did the angel feel that he wanted to wait? I think it had to do with the fact that who in fact is the source of blessing. The angel is not the source of blessing. God is the source of blessing, ultimately. And that could be the reason why. And the angel knew that at Bethel that was going to happen, and felt that Jacob should wait until then. Again, the idea of Jacob not wanting to wait, the idea of this being something that actually happened, there's some very powerful ideas going on there in terms of the fact that here a human being was able to essentially tell an angel what to do. And that's a whole big topic, I suspect. So.
Wasn't there also a connection to Beit El as far as when Yaakov was leaving home?
Yes.
To go north, Beit El was where he promised God that God would be his God. If God took care of him, then
right.
He would come back to that place.
Right. He also calls it, doesn't he also call it Peniel?
Here he does. Yeah, here he does. So
this spot is Peniel, and I thought that's because also that the isn't the angel Penuel or something like that? Penuel. I don't know. I'm sure there's a Rashi on it with Peniel and Penuel because they're in there.
Yeah, but
he does. He calls it the house of God. You're right, Shirabeth. And
so I'll come back here and I'll offer sacrifice. So it's as if maybe the angel was saying, well, you haven't actually fulfilled your side of the bargain yet.
Mm-hmm. Interesting thought. That certainly could be another reason why the angel felt that Jacob needed to fulfill that particular vow. Right. Let's stop. I'm going to stop the recording here. Thank you.